No, we don't have to do it. Oh, stop it real quick. Oh, because it's, I think. Hello and welcome to day 24 of the HUBZone Small Business Summit, and happy Friday, everybody. We have a great presentation for you today, government business development for HUBZone businesses. So given the fact this is a HUBZone Summit, couldn't be more applicable. So I apologize. We have a great presenter today, but I'm fairly certain I might butcher her name because I feel like I do that quite frequently. So Alicia, is that right?
Alessia, yep.
Alessia, okay. Alessia, I witnessed a couple of her presentations before, and she actually hosted this presentation at our strategic summit, and it went over so well. I said, please, please, please do this for virtual too, so that everyone can participate. As you guys heard, this is being recorded. So, but we do have a Q&A function as well as a chat function. Alicia also says that she really prefers an interactive discussion. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A chat, and she might even just ask us to elevate you to a panelist, so then you can just come on and speak. So she doesn't want you guys just sitting around and taking it all in. This is supposed to be a collaborative discussion. So I also wanted to point out, we just finished our last day of matchmaking yesterday. So for those that participated in matchmaking, I want to let you know that our buyers successfully completed 1,425 one-on-one meetings this month. So that is definitely an amazing feat. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to them here. Sorry, I can't speak apparently, but I've obviously spoke too much if I'm already getting choked up. So without further ado, I would like our speaker to take over, and I will go off. But again, I will be monitoring the Q&A. So let's get started, guys.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Welcome to Government Business Development for HUBZone Businesses. So let me tell you a little bit about our company and myself. So my name is Alessia Smetrova. I am the president and CEO of OST Global Solutions. We've won over $23 billion for our clients since our inception in 2005. So we're a Rockville, Maryland firm right outside of the Beltway, and we do business development, capture, and proposal consulting. So we will fill your pipeline. We will help you capture the opportunities, position for the RFP prior to the issuance, and help you develop and price proposals. We also have something really cool, which is a registered apprenticeship in government business development. So we actually will teach you or your staff completely in like what it takes to actually win business, like the large companies do. We teach you proper techniques, process, websites, tools, everything you need to know. It's over a course of 1 year, so 160 hours. Some of it's self-paced, some of it is live. And we also have a lot of public courses in all aspects of federal business development, foundations, and advanced. So lots of different opportunities to work with us. Check us out. We are a resource for you. So let's dive straight into it. By the way, just about myself a little bit. I'm a fellow of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals, was presiding over the National Capital Area chapter of APMP for 2 years, was also presiding over Bethesda Medical chapter of National Contracts Management Association, wrote 7 books on the subject, and I'm really passionate about what I do. So hopefully you find a lot of use in this session today, and check us out because we have a lot of really interesting resources for you. So let's talk about the basics on sort of BD preferences for HUBZone. I covered this assuming that sort of you know what this already is. Basically, government limits competition for certain contracts to businesses in historically underutilized business zones. If you're here, you already qualified for this. And as you know, government gives preferential consideration to HUBZones in full and open competitions. And so joining the HUBZone program makes your business eligible to compete for the program's set-aside contracts as well. And so HUBZone certified businesses get a 10% price evaluation preference in full and open contract competition. So HUBZone set aside, no. Full and open competition, yes, you get 10% price evaluation, 10% higher. You literally have the same price as your next competitor. That is not a HUBZone. And essentially, the price evaluation preference applies to both prime contracting and subcontracting, which is pretty amazing. 10% is a lot, right? And HUBZone certified businesses can still compete for contract awards under other socioeconomic programs they qualify for. So your small business, a big example, for example, is Polaris, right? So as you know, this is a big vehicle that's coming up, and it is aimed at women-owned and hub zones specifically, and then other small businesses can participate, but they don't get their own lane. So that's just one of the examples of where you have a vehicle kind of aimed at this particular category. Now, as you know, HUBZone set-asides are available indefinitely. So as long as your business continues to meet all of the requirements and you stay current with all the required certification obligations, which are, we've gotten a lot better, right? As you know, all the rules have changed, so your business can take advantage of those contracting opportunities indefinitely, right? Unlike 8A, where you end up after 9 years, you end up actually losing that particular designation, and the clock is ticking, and you're under the gun. If you're a HUBZone, also that actually gives you an opportunity to continue in the program. So you must be, however, to stay, you must be small business by SBA standards. As you know, it's all about the NAICS applicable to the solicitation. So you don't have this absolute sort of primary NAICS code like the 8A or secondary NAICS code. You're really looking at what is this proposal asking for. So you can stay a small business and be, for example, under 1,000 employees after you've already gone over the dollar amount in an NAICS, right? So like there's different solicitations. You can still be a small business when you're pretty large. And as you know, that the Small Business Runway Extension Act applies, classifying small business based on the average earnings over 5 years instead of 3. So now you got more time being a small business. And so some rules: must be owned and controlled at least 51% by US citizens or a CDC or an agricultural cooperative or an Indian tribe. Principal office must be located within the HUBZone, which includes lands considered Indian country, and military facilities closed by the Base Realignment Closure Act, otherwise known as BRAC. And at least 35% of employees must reside in a HUBZone. So these are the rules, right? Here's how the story goes, right? So this is not a huge competition yet, right? The federal government has a goal of awarding 3% of all dollars for federal prime contracts to HUBZone certified small business concerns, aka you. And the problem is that it's not exactly how it works out for the government, right? It has awarded 2.44%, or almost 2.5% of prime dollars for the small business procurement scorecard in 2020, which is the last year. It awarded only 1.65% of the subcontracting dollars, down from actually up from 1.37% in 2019, and below the 3% goal. As you can see, the government is underrunning the HUBZone dollars in both categories of prime contracts and subcontracts. So they're not performing really well still. And there's only 2,311 HUBZones in the top 100 NAICS in 2020. There's not that many. And HUBZone certified small businesses received about $11 billion, equal to more than 59,000 jobs in disadvantaged communities. 2,700 HUBZone small business prime contractors, right? 4% total small business vendors received an average of 5.3 million awards. And the sources, SBA.gov documents support small business procurement scorecard overview, right? So when you really think about the competition, you don't have a whole lot of HUBZone competition. The government doesn't have a huge HUBZone pool of companies to go to. So, but here's the problem. There's some difficult truths, and this is what I kind of want to base the premise of this presentation on, is that Washington Post did this very interesting analysis of 20 years of HUBZone data that shows about $800 million earmarked for firms that were enrolled in the program, and it was awarded to just 11 DC businesses. So literally people inside the Beltway know how to do it, and this literally just select few that all the money goes to. Those 11 firms accounted for 70% of HUBZone dollars allocated to the district since the program's debut. And the money usually went to firms in wealthier areas of the city, right? DuPont Circle, the HUBZone, Navy Yard, downtown Washington. And businesses in wealthier parts of the city have grown larger through securing HUBZone contracts, while those in the city's poorest areas, locations the program was designed to help, have largely been left behind. So you can actually read the article for yourself. So what is the takeaway from that? The takeaway is that the bigger fish fed the duck always get more food. So my question and challenge to you is, how do you win business like the big fish? So this is what this presentation is all about. I'm gonna tell you how to do this. I've won business for #1 government contractor, Lockheed Martin, then Raytheon, one of the top 5 government contractors, and helped Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, all the top 5, taught Boeing classes to Boeing on how to win business and everything else. So I know how to do this at the highest levels there are, but also have worked with hundreds of small businesses, some of them literally 2 people just starting out, and seeing what it's like to be in the trenches, what it's like to be a small business, right? So let me kind of give you that perspective. So from the standpoint of how do you do it right, but how do you do it smart using your limited resources? And when you really think about the business development process, I really like to give you the context, the big picture of how this works. So you begin the business development process, and the first step is to build capacity to do business with the government. And build capacity, when I really think about that, I gotta explain it. Hey, you need to see, what does the government need in your subject matter area? What do they ask for in the RFPs repeatedly? And every time you look at it, you go like, oh, I wish I had this capability. Then I could bid on this, or I wish I didn't have to subcontract this capability out. So what do you need to invest in the business? Like, right, so some of you, it may be secure facility security clearance. For some of you, it may be DCA compliant accounting system. For some of you, maybe qualified subject matter experts, ISO certification, CMMI, right, CMMC, whatever it is that you need to have in place. Facilities, right? So whatever you need to invest into in order for you to be able to compete, that is where you build capacity. And it's all kind of based on what is your customer asking for, right? And then you have strategic business development planning, which is step #2. That's not an administrative activity. Back in the day when I started OST, I was like, well, everybody tells me I need to have a business plan. And what does it really do for me? Okay, it's useful for the banks to get a loan. What is really useful for? Like, something that collected dust. I think I made it through a few pages of the template to get to where I need to get to, and did not really have a good business plan. Now, business development planning is even sort of more detailed than the actual general business plan. That is how you're going to grow your company. These days, I do it once a year on a larger scale, and every quarter, 1 full day, right, for our company. And we've grown a lot based on that. And I see our clients also, when they implement this process, they grow a lot as well. So what do you do during business development planning? Well, you decide based on the market research, who are going to be your top targets? Who are going to be your customers, right? What are going to be the opportunities where the money is going to come from? Because what really happens is that, a lot of people say, oh, well, I want to be 10 million by the end of the year, or I want to win 10 million worth of contracts by the end of the year. Where is it going to come from? What's in your pipeline that's going to get you this money based on your current win rate? So how many opportunities do you actually have to bid on and maybe lose, right? And maybe win so that you can get to your target dollars, right? If your win rate is 20% and you need to win $10 million by the end of the year, how many opportunities do you need to bid on? How many opportunities will it be, right? Total dollar value, actual number of opportunities, actual number of proposals you have to write. So you kind of need to make those decisions. You need to refresh those decisions. You need to revisit those decisions throughout the year. It's a very important process. Now, once you have enough information to make decisions, you go to step number 4, which is market to the feds and partners. And that's where you can do a lot wrong, right? By the way of wasting resources, which is time and money most of the time, right? So people's time and money. And that is because if you go to these events, right? So like matchmaking events, events where you meet with the government, events where you meet with partners, what do? You hand them a capability statement, don't you? And you want to make sure, hey, if I have a right capability statement and I present my company well enough and I tell them I'm HUBZone, that should be good enough. Is it? What is your experience? I mean, if you guys want to type into the chat box what your experience has been like going to those events, how much success you have had, I would be really curious. Because a lot of the times I don't see a lot of success. People come in disappointed. I mean, some people literally fly into DC area to go ahead and attend those meetings, spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time, and get nothing in return. And so the secret at those meetings is to go ahead and, yep, there you go. Nicole says we've had no success. Also, Michelle, if you have anybody raising their hand, want to ask a question, so also you can do that live too. Michelle can work with you to elevate you, or you want to say something. That works too.
We do have a question in here about sole sourcing, and I do have a lot of comments about matchmaking too, but based on the experience, because obviously I host them all the time. And sometimes I come across buyers that are there to check a box, but I also come across a lot that have gone above and beyond in order to develop a strategy. But where I usually see that companies come up short is because they generalize everything. They come in, they put a lot of focus on their certifications, because no offense, your certification has nothing to do with the capabilities that you have. And under no circumstances are you ever going to get a contract because of a socioeconomic set aside, because that's not what they're purchasing. They're purchasing your actual skill sets. And then when you have those general things and you don't do your due diligence, meaning that you haven't, educated yourself about any opportunities that are actually coming out.
Thank you.
And remember, these are OSTBUs. These are small business representatives. They're your advocate. They are not the programs people. They are not the contract specialists. They have to go back and try to articulate to those individuals why you're well suited. And if you just indicate like, I do X, Y, and Z, but you can't correlate it to an opportunity, that is literally like making them find a needle in a haystack. They don't understand it, especially in 90% of the time, especially in very tech and R&D realms. You think that OSTBU really understands what you do? I can assure you how many times I get requests for companies with certain capabilities that I literally have to Google 60% of the request because I have no idea what it means. So if you aren't able to say, hey, I've researched this opportunity, I realized that you were awarded this, and I believe that I'm well suited because of X, Y, and Z, they're basically going to be able to regurgitate that to the programs person, and they will pick up. And one benefit with virtual summits, like I personally hate virtual because I'm a very interactive person, and I obviously talk a lot, if anyone hasn't noticed in these like 30 seconds, that virtual, a lot of programs people actually have been participating in matchmaking. And that's why I was actually so disappointed by the lack of participation from the HUBZone community, because I knew that some contract specialists and programs people were going to jump on the meetings, but they weren't really telling me. It was like kind of like a surprise. And they were like, oh yeah, such and such decided they wanted to sit in. I'm like, no, especially if I wasn't having full schedules for people. So you never know what's going to happen, and you should always be prepared. But I've walked by sessions with matchmaking and people are like, I do this, what do you have for me? And I'm like, please stop.
Exactly, Michelle. And that you nailed it. You nailed it completely, right? So if you show up to those sessions, I'm not saying don't go, right? So because you should, those are excellent. You need to come in with your list of opportunities that you want to verify, make sure they're funded, you get the dates on when they were issued, who would be the program manager, who would be the people involved that you could possibly talk to. The contracting officers may not want you talking to anybody else, but OSDBOs may be able to give you that information, right? So it's really interesting. Don't show up unprepared. Don't tell, hey, here's what I do. Just like Michelle said, have a list of opportunities, verify real opportunities, go target specific people at specific events. So the next step, number 5, is build and manage an opportunities pipeline. And that is where that list even comes from, right? So like, what do you actually kind of think when you think of a pipeline, right? So it's a time-based list of opportunities. What are you going to bid on this month, next month, 5 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, when your next recompete comes up? Because your incumbent contract is a recompete. You have to defend your incumbency. You're going to have to bid on it again, right? So it is basically a pipeline that feeds all of your bids. If you don't have things that are good in your pipeline, that are qualified, you're going to have a hard time winning anything. Yeah, you still can win. You can still win a bluebird, a pop-up opportunity out of the blue, but kind of really basing your future of your business on that is not necessarily a very good business strategy, right? Because hope is not a strategy. So then you qualify in step number 6, you qualify each individual opportunity. Qualifying means that you look at each opportunity in great detail and research. Who would be the customer? How do you engage with them? What would be all the information that's published on this opportunity? What is the win strategy initially? What do you think it should be based on the hot buttons you already researched about the customer? What is the competition possibly? Who is the incumbent, right? What would be the possible early sort of thoughts on teaming strategy? Because those matter, right? So if you actually find somebody who is more likely to win and the customer gave you that feedback, that's who you want to team with, right? And then of course, solution development, so that while you're still able early on to have the dialogue with the customer, with the government customer, you may be able to vet that solution, run it by them, shape that solution if necessary. So then you get to the longest step in this whole process called capture. And that step, again, it's actually going over the 6 areas of capture in greater detail. So you have customer engagement, intelligence gathering, win strategy development, competitive analysis, teaming, and solution development. And all of those areas overlap. You take one out, that's why it's a Venn diagram in OST process, or you take one out, then the whole process kind of loses everything, right? Take the customer out. You're not going to know what the customer really needs. You won't know what's the story behind the story. What's the story behind the publicly published opportunity in the data? If you take win strategy out, you're going to be disjointed. You're going to just throw all kinds of stuff against the wall, technical stuff, hoping to win on price, right? So all of these areas are really, really important, and you kind of build them up bottom up before the RFP ever hits the street. Then finally, you go to step number 8, you prepare proposal. And during this step, you want to make sure that you master all the techniques of proposal persuasion. We actually have great classes on that, either as part of our apprenticeship program or as part of just public courses that you can take. And that is writing persuasive government proposals. Check them out. We really teach you how to do that, but you want to master all kinds of elements of proposal persuasion. So that your proposals don't sound like in response to the RFP, MPT, to the blah, blah, blah agency. We are pleased to submit this proposal. We're proud of our 15-year history as a HUBZone and the best place to work. And we have won lots of opportunities with similar agencies in the past, and more and more about you, and you bore them to death, and you tell them what to do but not how, You don't give them persuasive arguments of why to select you. You don't use persuasive writing. You are using a lot of adjectives. We're highly seasoned, a highly qualified staff, so all kinds of basically superlatives and salesy language that essentially does not work for winning business. So you want to make sure that you prepare your proposals, use the proposal process, prepare the proposals so that you have a higher win probability. And then you develop business during project execution. What is that? Step number 9 is where you upsell to the government, essentially. And that means that you find out about new opportunities, you feed your pipeline, you find out about their needs, where you can add scope to your existing opportunities, and your staff actually help you write proposals. They are your subject matter experts, because nobody in government contracting should have a 9-to-5 job. The only way that your staff are going to have 9-to-5 job is if you work half time, which is basically 12 hours a day, 7 days a week as a business owner. And I don't know why you would have traded your 40 hours a week job for 80-hour a week job, right? Doing all the business development. If some of you are doing that, stop. Everybody should be pitching in and contributing, and you should find a way to reward them for that. So now, when you really think about those 9 steps, right? So this business development process, think of it as like this machine that actually feeds your growth. I really like the analogy by Jim Collins from the book Good to Great. And that is essentially a book where he describes a heavy flywheel. And the analogy is like, so you're pushing forward this heavy flywheel over and over and over again, day in and day out. And it's hard and it's tough. I mean, when you're small, doing all of this and probably billing, right, on a government project. And it's just really incredibly hard. It's even for one person doing this full time is incredibly hard to do it correctly, right? But you have to do as much as you can correctly and get help, right? So consulting firms like ours get help and get to that place where you're essentially finally feeling like whoosh, the wheel had started catching the momentum. The machine starts working. It's easier. You get leverage. You get qualified people into your business development organization, and you start growing. And now it's a company. It's not just a sheer willpower from you, your blood, sweat, and tears just from you and maybe your business partners, right? So you need to kind of look at this as, hey, I have to show up every day. I have to do my best every day. And for that, you have to know what to do correctly, right? Because you cannot be, going west looking for sunrise, right? If you're going in a completely wrong direction, you're not going to get there no matter how hard you work. So let's kind of work through, I talked a lot about steps number 1 and 2. Let's talk about step number 3, which is market research. You need to know where the target agency is on its HUBZone goals, right? So look up the agency scorecard at SBA to gauge your agency's performance in HUBZone awards. So there's a link here. And you want to advertise your company to agencies that are short on HUBZone awards. You want to understand competitive landscape. So you want to search USAspending.gov, and I hope everyone is familiar with this free resource that the government has provided for us. So search USAspending.gov for HUBZone awardees at that agency. You can sort all of the awards. And when you think about, sort of opportunity, what is an opportunity? Can you guys type in the chat box what constitutes an opportunity? When you look at something, it's an opportunity. That means the upcoming contract. What would be an opportunity in government contracting? Upcoming sources sought, absolutely. RFPs, absolutely. Keep going. Where do you find opportunities, right? Beta.sam, forecasts, thank you. Agency forecasts will actually publish opportunities that are going to be coming up for competition. What else? GovWin or other BD services? Absolutely, they will tell you what the opportunities are. What else? the biggest sort of source of opportunities is still missing. Past awards and company, exactly, right? So like I have RFI, sources sought, RFP, task orders, SBIR, shaping opportunity before it's posted, correct. But the most important one, yes, simplified acquisitions. You find out from the contracting officer, right, about that. You're talking to them, you find out about smaller opportunities that are not even advertised anywhere. The most important ones are past awards that are expiring contracts that you caught early enough so that there is time for the competition. So you want to get that information from usaspending.gov to see what's expiring in the next, I don't know, 6 months or something. You need to look at the length. And that is the source of different opportunities. And so essentially, you can also find out from teaming partners, right? So like there's lots of different sources where you can learn about the opportunities. So now you want to make the arguments to push opportunities to HUBZone set-asides with that government customer. You need to do a little bit of research to see that there's 2 or more, right? That rule is still there. So this is why it's so different between the 8A companies versus HUBZones. So 8A is the easy button. And the easy button essentially is to go ahead and award to an 8A because you don't need to make sure there's 2 or more 8As. As long as there's 1 8A, in 2 weeks, you're going to be under contract. HUBZone, you need to make sure there's 2 or more. There is a legislation on the Hill that's being literally blocked by one senator. And now we're trying to, the group that I'm involved in, GovConNet Council, in the Madison consulting group, I believe,
Madison Services Grouping.
Madison Services Group, yeah. They're working really hard, and they were actually exhibiting and are exhibiting at this conference. They are actually working really hard to get a more creative way to get around this one particular pesky senator. I don't want to get political here, but that they want to get around that to remove that rule so that HUBZone is just as good as the 8A program. It becomes that easy button too. But before that is the case, you need to actually kind of show that there's, 2 or more, or you could argue with the sole source, right? There's no 2 or more HUBZones available to do the work. You need to prove that, and you need to keep track of the legislative changes when this changes, right? So this is step number 3. Now, step number 4, I'll go ahead, Michelle.
I did want to let you know that are you going to elaborate more on sole sourcing later, or do you want me to? We had some questions that came in.
Yeah, there's a slide on that.
Okay, so then we'll wait until there. And then, and there's another comment. So I just wanted to make sure that, I'll stop talking now.
All right. So interrupt me if I somehow don't have it in this presentation because I don't remember it by heart. But there's a comment here from Madulika. Sorry for if I butchered your name, but some advice not to market to agencies that have not met their HUBZone goals in the previous years because the agency might not have this as their priority. Please comment this thought process. I don't know if it's not their priority. I mean, there's somebody in that agency that considers it their priority. Michelle, you raised your hand. Go ahead. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I was going to wait for you to finish it, but I wanted to give a good example. So at the strategic summit, a lot of times we notice that intelligence agencies tend to struggle with meeting their goals, and even with defense, because their first goal is national security, and then obviously budget plays a big component. So DIA actually came with an excessive amount of participation. Like they even brought a senior contract specialist with them, which was extremely rare to come to an event. And they were very engaging and actually, reached out to me afterwards, specifically asking me about companies and correlating it with opportunities. So I was very impressed with them, but they said, listen, we have struggled in the past, but they've developed multiple strategies. They're doing dual RFIs. They're sending out notices. They sent me 2 emails about upcoming RFIs. It wasn't that it's not their priority, but our safety and, national security obviously is always going to be their first priority. So, but they are doing stuff, and they, I was pretty impressed about their involvement and their follow on too. So I wouldn't say necessarily that's always the case. Now, have I gotten some agencies that literally just openly said, I don't care? I'm not going to call them out on here, But yes, I've met people that have done that. But there's just, it's a different balance. It's not all of them.
Great comments. Great comments. Thank you. All right. So 4.0 market to feds and partners during COVID-19. Right. So we're still in the throes of the pandemic, right? So as you know, the Delta variant has thrown a big curve. Who knows what else comes out with COVID still being an issue, right? We have some great in-person events. It was really refreshing to be at a conference live at the HUBZone conference. So the spirit, the mood was really festive. I hope people who are attending this webinar also had a chance to make it there. It was just really wonderful. And the challenges, though, those events, like lots of them are still getting canceled. Some of them are not happening. Some people don't go to work, right? So challenges for newcomers, the pre-existing relationships and footprint are there, whereas it's really hard to build new virtual relationship. It's much tougher. So what I really tell people, look, some people actually will answer the phone more readily because they are the people who are not doing well in the shutdown, because they're people. And some people are project people. They're like, where have you been? The shutdown all this time. I'm in my happy place. I'm in my cave. I don't want to come out of my cave. I'm good. I don't want to talk to another human being again. I can just hide behind my phone and just interact with email, or maybe not interact at all. Right? So I've made it finally. So it really is just very different. Some people will pick up the phone more readily these days, and some people not so much. So what I really uniformly find is helpful is white papers and point papers. They are your best friend in technical areas to create interest and set up appointments. So what it is white paper is like where you actually show your entire solution. It's very targeted. It is speaking to specific hot buttons, but your entire solution is there, and you kind of show it and you're hoping that they read it, right? And you send it over. Now, point papers are basically PowerPoint presentations where you tease the government enough, but they want to have that conversation. What I tell people is that, when you send somebody a white paper, you show them the whole leg, right? And when you show them the point paper, it's an ankle, and they want to see your leg, and the meeting is where you show the leg, right? so that's the difference. So, and you create the interest, you set up the appointments, and there's also case studies you could give to the government, like where you do it working on the program, they're about to run this program. You can actually write up a really interesting lessons learned study, so successful past performance, best practices. So you literally can write that up and send it to this particular contracting officer to shape the RFP, to help them, sort of guide them towards, hey, I really want to talk to you more about those different lessons learned. Let's do that. So you also can emphasize digital marketing. Make sure that you review your website. It's up to date. It's good. It's interactive. It is search engine optimized. They can find you. It represents your company best. So as you know, conference industry is moving to virtual platforms with mixed success. So evaluate whether it's worth the money. Some of them do better. Some of them do worse. A lot of them have learned from the last year, and they're doing much better these days. And the technology has evolved. You also want to participate in professional associations and groups, sit on boards and committees to meet government personnel. When you are actually interacting with the government personnel in an unofficial capacity, right? So NCMA, for example, National Contracts Management Association, lots of contracting officers sit there, right? You may be on a committee with them working on something else and build that relationship, or join AFCEA, or join ACT-IAC, NDIA, right? So lots of different opportunities for you to do that, but you have to be proactive, right? So you still have an opportunity to interact. And one example here that I have is key performance indicators. So one time we were not able to talk to a contracting officer. So, no contracting officer, but program staff and regional staff. Like there were lots of regions in that program. It was really big DHS procurement, and our client was really upset because the contracting officer issued a gag order. So nobody can talk to the program staff. And we were still marketing, we were still kind of advertising the company in those stages. And so I basically told our client, hey, don't despair. So what I did is I actually summarized multiple books and articles on key performance indicators and used sort of disturbing trends and project complexity, sort of the first 2 slides to relate it to that program without naming that program. It was a general thing. So our guys still traveled to different regions, still sent that presentation out and said, hey, I'm in town to give this presentation on different metrics and KPIs and dashboards that you may find interesting, and sent it over. I mean, that presentation made it through all the regions to the program manager literally within 1 hour. Everybody wanted to talk to him about it. It wasn't about that program, but it was marketing that company with those solutions that eventually went into the project management plan and was a winning solution. So things like that are the kinds of things that capture managers do and the kinds of things that get you meetings. So let's talk about the SBA's old small mentor protege. So you want to get a mentor, and you can have no more than 2 mentors in the business lifetime. And what I tell people is getting a mentor is like, like a lot of people, and I don't know if there are any single people among you, but people want to find themselves a partner. But when you really talk about a mentor, you want to get yourself a husband that's rich and treats you well and gives you everything and makes your life wonderful, right? Or husband or wife, whatever, right? So like a partner. So you need to kind of really be very intentional about hunting for that rich spouse, right? So and that, like how do women go, for example, when they're like in the mode to get themselves a rich husband? They go to country clubs to meet people, they go to different events where rich men go, right? Or hopefully single rich men go. So things like that, right? So when you're really looking for the mentor, for a good mentor, you need to be looking at who is successful at your agency, what do they work on, what makes them tick, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, study them in advance, make a value proposition to them, craft it, work on that relationship over time, right? Get to become a subcontractor to them, maybe bring them as a subcontractor on some of those HUBZone set-asides, and work on that so that, because there's this dating period, right? You don't get married right away. And then when you get to that point of where you get ready to say, I do, right? You want to know what to ask from a mentor. So the SBA has an excellent online all small tutorial. So you want to save your completion certificates for that and prepare your business plan. And you want to create a mentor protege agreement. It tells you about all the different things that you can ask from them, like your business development assistance, contracting assistance, managerial assistance, staffing assistance. I mean, there's all so many different areas that they can actually help you with, and you need to document that in your agreement so it's in writing. They need to bring you in on existing opportunities. So that's what really helps with that. Use the certified.sba.gov website to apply, and then form a HUBZone joint venture where you can leverage the strengths of a large company as your own and their past performance as well. So a great program. Step number 5 is build your pipeline. You want to determine existing opportunities that may warrant or compete, HUBZone, other small business opportunities that could go HUBZone. And note that all programs can rarely be taken out of the 8A program. Once it goes 8A, it's stuck there. It's stuck there, right? There are tricks to get it out, but very unlikely. And then SBA PCRs, if somebody reports that, are going to investigate that. So be very careful with that. So work on aligning sole source opportunities in the 4th quarter to help agency meet its goals with the HUBZones and use versus lose budget, right? So when you really look at the quarters of the government fiscal year spending, so you have Q1 that we're in right now is kind of, pretty active. Then it kind of dies out towards the end of the Q2. When you take vacations in government contracting is in the spring, right? So when Q3 actually happens, and for some agencies, end of Q3 really is where a lot of the activities start happening, but Q4 is where things get really wild, right? So Q4 is the busiest. It just ended, but we're still kind of seeing pretty good activity out there. Step number 6 is to qualify each individual opportunity. So determine if the opportunity is a fit. Use a workbook, decision tree, checklist, scoring system, or software. We have a great bid no bid decision framework. It's free on our website. You can actually get that. We run the evaluation periodically and determine if the opportunity could be sole sourced or set aside, and collect and share analysis of competitor availability with your government contact, right? So what Michelle was mentioning earlier. So you need to be using those opportunities for networking, networking events, matchmaking as a venue to talk to the government about specific things. So let's talk about HUBZone sole source rules, right? So Michelle, do you want to speak here about that? Any kind of tips that you want to point out?
Sure. Now, HUBZone sole sourcing, just in veteran-owned sole sourcing and even women-owned sole sourcing, is not the same as 8A. As you mentioned earlier, we have been working on the Hill to try to create a consistent approach with 8A. And it's a little bit more than one senator that was blocking it, but we were successful that they were going to add an amendment. I have seen the draft language for the NDAA, and it looks like they're still looking to increase sole sourcing, the cap across the board, but they're still not addressing the core issue that really limits the amount of sole sourcing opportunities, and it's the J&A and the rule of 2 requirement. So unlike 8A, HUBZone, as you mentioned with the rule of 2, you're supposed to set it aside if you believe there's 2 or more eligible parties, okay? And if you do believe there's 2 or more eligible, it means that it's not well suited for a sole source. So basically, have companies been successful with sole sourcing? Yes, they have, but you have to show what makes you unique, okay? A sole source means that you are the only person to do this. Now, you can get creative. There's multiple components that lead into sole sourcing, meaning that, time is a variable. You are working that contract. You have a specific technology or a knowledge of a specific technology. Like, what makes you well suited for that? I have helped companies that, ended up getting a sole source, but it was because they provided something unique. So if you just walk in and say, hey, I provide administrative support services and I'm a HUBZone company, so you can sole source to me. Well, congratulations. There's literally 38 million small businesses in the United States. Now, of course, there's only probably about 400 plus that are competing in the federal contracting arena, but that still means that there is most likely 20,000 plus companies that probably do it. Now, there might not be that many HUBZone companies, but again, that is not a unique identifier. So you have to be able to identify why you are well suited for this sole source. I had a company a couple months ago that actually, it wasn't a HUBZone sole source that they did. They did only technically acceptable sole source because it actually was better based on like the cap and how they were soliciting it. But we shaped it from cradle to the grave, and they ended up getting that sole source. I had another company that we were able to pivot an entire opportunity that he was trying to get sole source, but we did it as a set aside because it was better suited. A sole source isn't always the best avenue in some instances. So I know I talk really fast, but did that make sense? Did I cover it all, or did I kind of jump around? Because I do that. This is why I don't train.
All right. Well, there's a lot of knowledge there. And so there's if you guys want to ask questions, we'll leave some time at the end to do that and to talk about what you want to talk about. Let's
but essentially sole sources are rare, but possible.
So you want to conduct HUBZone specific capture. So HUBZone specific capture is step number 7, and that is where there's an emphasis on customer engagement to drive opportunity to the HUBZone program. And intelligence gathering is there to create an impression on the customer and design a compelling approach so that you can find out all about that opportunity and it's kind of the depth of knowledge that there is that's published and incorporate that. Win strategy development to understand how to maximize win probability is really, really key. How we do that is we actually base it on the hot buttons that the customer has and then provide to them what it is that they need. And if we don't have it, we go ahead and get it. And that's your win strategy, right? That's your action items. Competitive analysis helps you determine other HUBZones playing in the field. if it's a HUBZone set aside, right, or other businesses in a full and open competition playing in the field, and then or small business set aside. Solution development or teaming strategy is mentor protege joint venture, all small HUBZone joint venture. You could also have other options, right? So you could have a CTA and prime sub relationships and so on and so forth. And then solution development for competitive bids. So solution development for competitive bids has to take place early on, because then you have an opportunity to percolate, right? So when you're trying to respond to an RFP, and it's a quick RFP, when you're really, have a deadline of 1 week, 2 weeks, even a month, that's not enough time for you to truly brainstorm on everything in the whole proposal process. So you really want to do that stuff in advance, and you get to think through things deeply, and your proposals are markedly different from other people's proposals that didn't allow themselves that time. Speaking of proposals, step number 8 is mastering writing impactful proposals. So it gets you on the team more easily. Everyone appreciates a small business that can contribute to the team. So when you are the small business that's good at proposals, largest want you on their team. They invite you all the time. We have like this one client of ours that especially was really happy about that. They go like CACI and SAIC were the two companies that they were teaming with, and they constantly got invited to sit in the war room with them. And you know what? They learned in our classes. They went and brought their knowledge and their enthusiasm, their sort of desire to help and contribute. And then they learned what great looked like when they were sitting in the war rooms with the best of the proposal development. And then they grew their company so fast, they sold it. And, they're doing really well right now for themselves. So that's the American dream, right? Helps you in competitive HUBZone and small business set-asides opportunities, and even full and open bids when you know how to write winning proposals, right? So you need to understand the right proposal process. So what is process, right? You need to know the sequence in which things are done, how to organize the proposal team. What are the reviews, your pinks, your reds, your golds, your white glove, your green, whatever it is that you are using, right? And we have compliance. Compliance is essentially, are you responsive to the government requirements? Are you giving the government what they really want? Is there correct writing process that your people are using, so they're not stuck and they're not producing stuff you're having to rewrite and you're wasting time, or you're submitting something that is subpar? Proposal persuasion. The elements of proposal persuasion is executive summary, win themes, graphics, so good proposal language, and so on. And there's pricing, subject matter expertise. All of these are elements of the proposal process that's successful. And then, of course, you develop business during project execution. So you grow the scope of the existing contracts. You learn about new opportunities from your on-site staff. You train your staff in business development and capture. You want to know that your people know how to recognize the opportunities, how to communicate those opportunities to your business development team, or to you if you are the business owner who's still doing the business development. What information do they need to feed you for the capture efforts? How not to get you in trouble when they grab things that are not appropriate, like acquisition sensitive materials. You want to train them not to do that, right? How to best contribute to proposals. They need to be trained in writing. Your BD workforce needs to be your sales force. So that's how you avoid working around the clock as a business owner, as somebody who is the head of BD tasked with business development for that organization, for your organization, where you have to work around the clock, but others don't. So you want to make sure that you spread that load around. With that said, I wanted to see if you guys had any questions or comments. We have a couple of minutes left still.
All right. So one of the questions that we have is this proposal writing process is speaking to a course that you offer. Nicole wanted, or did you already answer that? She was asking about a proposal writing course.
Yeah, we have writing persuasive government proposals. We have a variety of different courses coming up. Like if you don't know how to create a compliant proposal outline, we have like a course on developing compliant proposals. Actually shows you how to dissect the RFP, how to make sure your proposal is fully responsive, build an annotated outline. Writing persuasive proposals actually talks about different techniques of persuasion, shows you how to develop a solution, how to write it up, how to make sure that your proposal is compelling. Not only compliant, but compelling. We have courses on editing, desktop publishing, proposal graphics, conceptualization. So there's this whole variety of different courses, win themes, win strategy. So a whole variety of different courses. If you want to take them all kind of at once, there's a highly subsidized apprenticeship program that allows you to do that all kind of in fell swoop and get certified by the Department of Labor. We are the only provider in the nation of the apprenticeship, certified apprenticeships, and it's a nationally recognized certificate.
You're just not telling me this? What? Why is this news to me? Can we talk about that a little bit more? I mean, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're not really on a time crunch unless you are. So okay, I'd like to hear more about how companies or individuals, because one of the big things with the council is it's, investing in your incumbent workforce. How do you get the tools and resources you need? Sometimes they're already there. You just need to invest in them. So I'd love for you to elaborate about how that could be done.
Absolutely. So we have two different programs. One of them, before I forget, is the GI Bill, sort of like we're the organization, we're on par with colleges. We're an eligible training provider on par with colleges, and we're actually able to receive veteran administration money, like vocational rehab, GI Bill. Like so if you're a service disabled veteran, you're able to get this program paid for by the VA, and you even make money, like you get extra money for housing while you're taking this program. So like you actually make money. And GI Bill, similarly, if you have some money left on that, there's other programs. If you're a dependent of a veteran eligible for the program, you're actually able to pay for the training. And we have the apprenticeships. We have apprenticeship certified, registered apprenticeship with the Maryland Department of Labor, DC, and also Virginia. And we're right now about to be certified nationally. And we're the only company that actually does that. We have 160 hours of hardcore training reviewed by the Departments of Labor. It is really excellent training and goes in a lot of depth. It's certified government business development specialist. And so it essentially covers everything from where to find the opportunities, how to set up the pipeline, to how to capture opportunities, to how to write winning proposals. And it's been really successful. I've been having this program for the last 2 years.
Can you explain a little bit more, like you made the comment about the subsidy with the apprenticeship, like how that works and how companies might be able to apply for that funding?
Absolutely. Right now, at the moment, it especially benefits Maryland small businesses. Maryland Department of Labor, for the eligible Maryland small businesses, will go ahead and you can actually apply, and we help you do the paperwork. It is still up to them to approve you or not approve the program. The whole program costs $9,500 over the course of a year. But Maryland will offset $4,500, and at the end of the completion, we'll send you the check for $4,500. And I mean, they do, like we've gotten those checks for our own internal people, and they will give you $1,000 tax credit towards that program. So they approve you in advance, and then you get to file that in your taxes for the year when the person is taking the coursework in the program. And people have to work in the company, they have to be employed in the company and by the company. So even if you're a business owner, you need to be employed by your company, and there's some requirements from the state because they run the program, they oversee the program, they audit us, but they are also subsidizing the program heavily. Now, Virginia businesses have a much smaller subsidy. I think it's only $500. DC doesn't have anything that we know of, but Maryland small businesses benefit from that greatly. But it's still a great price. I mean, for $9,500 to get a full
for an entire year. You imagine investing, like think about taking an employee that already has a loyalty to you and has been working for you, rather than trying to chase after somebody that's going to demand $120,000, $150,000 that doesn't have that client loyalty. And so sometimes, it goes a long way to invest in those that have already invested in you. So that's awesome. I'm a little
Thank you.
upset that I'm just now hearing about this. Or you might have told
Sorry.
me and it got buried in my email, and in which case I'm very, very sorry. Makish, I apologize if I like completely butcher your name. I'm really bad about that. Now, your comment about sole sourcing, do you believe like I answer that, or do you want to elaborate on that, or do you want me to just elevate you so you can actually physically speak and not have to talk? Like, you know, try to type all of it. I mean, because it's very, you know, I'd have to know about your particular situation to be able to give you a suggestion about a tactic, because again, like I said, it's very unique. So are you still with us? Did you want to talk or? Okay, I'm hearing like it's quiet right now, so I don't know. I'm just making sure that they didn't respond. And then a couple people were asking me about the recording. It is being recorded. And just to let you guys know, so the digital agenda, I have it linked to public. So we've been doing sessions since September 1st. And most of the stuff has all been recorded. There's been a couple that are like federal ones that I didn't record, which I'm like regretting because they were really good. But I like to make people feel like they can speak openly. But you'll be able to review the recordings there. Even if you're not registered for the virtual summit, you'll still be able to access the recordings there. So it's like a more consistent thing rather than having to send out blasts to everybody about unique individual links. Because if your email looks like anything like mine right now, you'll probably lose it. Okay, so Makish is here. Do you want me to bring you up to speak? Like switch you over? You just said, hey, Michelle. Yes, please. Okay. All right. Here. Let's see here. Let me pull you out of here. If you're anything like me, yeah, I hate trying to type a book report. So.
And while you're doing this, Mandela asks, does the subsidy apply to VA companies with office in Maryland? I don't know. It really depends on how you're set up, but it may, right? So if you have Maryland employees, it's up to them. So we can definitely look into that.
So reach out to her individually so you can. But Makish, you got the floor if you want to talk about sole sourcing, and also tell me if I'm butchering your name.
Sure, Michelle. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Makesh Pichepillai. I'm president of Code 360. We are specialized in health IT, cloud technologies, and business analytical software. And we are unique in the sense of like actually we are very good at like actually the enterprise architecture and agency IT governance. And we are very good at blending those IT governance with advanced technologies to make greater results. That is our unique skills, and we have got 96% of open rating from our customers and on time and on budget delivery. So we have a good success rates in terms of the past performances. We are 8A certified and HUBZone small business, and we were kind of ISO 9100 27001 certified as well. So we have a very strong experience, expertise, and the skills we bring to our table. And I mean, as Misha mentioned, like we are looking into we don't have any prime contract experience yet, and that is our goal for this year and the next year. That is our first thing we are focusing on to get a prime contract award. And any help would be really greatly appreciated to get in there.
Do you want to take that one first, or do you want me to jump in there first? Alicia?
Well, you jump.
Okay. So, well, one, the fact of being in the health IT with everything that was going on with COVID, there was a lot of exceptions that were made in order to get the tools and resources that are needed. There's also an excessive amount of money. If you guys have been watching the legislation, based on the recent executive order, and that was actually what came out with the IA, is that all these agencies are going to have tracking for vaccinations, meaning that there's going to be an influx at every agency for opportunities coming down the pike about trying to be able to adhere to HIPAA guidelines, but also effectively track this stuff. So you're probably going to see a lot coming down the pike. Now, HUBZone sole source versus 8A. Obviously, I would love the fact that like HUBZone source, but my BD hat, I put that on, and they're going to go 8A because they don't have the obstacles. So don't fight yourself. I mean, yes, by some principle, we should have HUBZone sole sources, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is you have to think about what's best for you. And the government is not going to be subject to a protest to do a 8A sole source to you. So right now with the 8A sole source, since they can sole source up to $4 million for that contract. Now, if the NDA passes, that's going to go up. So, because I have seen the draft, but you know, you don't want to blast it out there and then figure out that, you know, you shot yourself in the foot. Because there is some resistance to some of the language that we're putting in there. But anyways, what you can do is start targeting some of these agencies that you have sub past performance with. Can you elaborate about who you have worked as a sub?
Yes, we have a significant subcontracting experience with the CMS. We preliminarily supported CMS for last 7 years as a subcontractor.
Okay.
We provided the CTO architecture and the TRB governance support as a SME. We provided a subcontract, and as well as like actually we supported one of the QAO organization to build their business intelligence dashboard and data mart for them. That's one of the subcontract we did. On top of it, a couple of fire projects. Like actually, we were technical SME supporting one of the fire pilot project to get them project intake to authority to operate, right? So we kind of supported from end to end that pilot project for a CPI, CMS CPI organization. That also one of the subcontract we supported. In addition to that, for a same CPI, we provided technical SME expertise for the infrastructure governance. So like we have a 4 or 5 subcontracting experience with the CMS, and the CMS is one of our prime focused agency. On top of it, like we are looking at any obdivs under HHS as well. Like actually, CDC is our next prime focus. So these are the agencies we are targeting. But as I mentioned, we are kind of looking into a breakthrough in a prime contract. So that's one of the things we are missing at this point.
So have you facilitated a connection with CDC and CMS on
Yes.
Okay. So you working with Anita?
Yes,
Alan?
yes, I spoke with Anita, and I meet Anita in many events. Yeah, yes, I have that connections.
So maybe we need to circle back around with them and, have that conversation. Now, full disclosure, HHS is very heavily built on their contract vehicles. Now, recently, I've been doing a lot of acquisition training with the contracting officers and making it very clear that the reason why they struggle with their small business spending goals is because they're creatures of habit. They have a very narrow source selection. They go path of least resistance. So, and they actually don't use sole sourcing even from 8A as much as a lot of other agencies do. But they have, I can tell you, based on conversations that I've had behind the scenes, there is a lot of pressure coming down on HHS to kind of increase the amount of small business participation from a unique perspective, meaning, hey guys, stop just throwing everything on these contract vehicles. So I do see some shift there, but it's a big overhaul for them and it's going to take some time, but I'm just saying, don't give up on that approach, but be specific like you were in this conversation. I mean, that was a really good way of you articulating your capabilities and how you are uniquely qualified to support some of these efforts. And if you can correlate that, I would say, like, even with a white paper approach of indicating where there might be a gap and where you can fill it. So HHS has an inordinate amount of money. They do a lot within SBIRs. So sometimes it's not about what's on the streets. It's about what you can shape to be geared towards yourself.
Sure, Mr. Yeah, that would be great advice. Yeah, that's definitely, we will look into it. And we are trying to put almost a lot of many of the RFIs which we can to the CMS and all the primarily CMS RFIs we focus. And yeah, we continue doing that one, and we continue knocking the door of CMS and CDC, and hopefully like we can get that breakthrough soon. And any other sorry, Michelle, other than HHS, like you mentioned, HHS is still getting under pressure to get increase their small business participation, but any other agencies which you can think of, like where can
look at that link in the presentation on the scorecard. Just also keep in mind that the DoD is going to be 3 months behind, so there's lagging data, but generally you'll get that information there. And Michelle, off the top of your head, who can you think of?
What was that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you think of any agency that is not meeting their HUBZone goals, that maybe a good or small business goals, that maybe a good sort of agency to focus on?
Well, so there was an executive order that was passed that basically was requiring every agency to look at their contract bundling and, reassess and put approach. So the ones that obviously, like, we're creatures of habit as a society, we target the ones that have the largest budget. And that's why with HHS, I was like, listen,
Right.
with everything that's going on with COVID, you and defense are going to be under the spotlight because you have such a large budget. So NIH is really putting a lot of pressure on it, but it's a change in their acquisition philosophy, and that doesn't happen overnight. A lot of the smaller agencies that actually been doing a lot better. If you look on the agenda that I sent you, like Census Bureau actually had a large participation. When we just had the event with DOT, FHA, 35% HUBZone spending. So Department of Transportation, we have this huge infrastructure bill that's going to be coming down the pike. They're going to be influx of money. There are going to be an agency that you want to target. And with your unique skill set, because every agency is going to have to come up with strategies of developing a technology in order to track this, agencies that you would never think of, because like obviously you go to healthcare because HHS, but now that door is going to be opening up to every agency. But ones are going to have a lot larger budget than others. So sometimes even targeting the smaller agencies and developing a concept that can solve their problem, they're going to be willing to do a sole source. But say with HHS, very saturated market. You have a lot of the really big dogs that are already there, the large businesses, they have an internal infrastructure that can probably already adhere to that. But smaller agencies like SBA and things like that aren't going to have that infrastructure. But it's also not just about you. You could be looking at other companies that complement the services that you provide and maybe developing a type of consortium type model of companies that provide this service and start going after these opportunities. There was a company that was at our event that did a pitch, and he has an algorithm, and that's who they called me about. SBA called me about him, DIA called me about him because they heard him. They were like, man, this executive order just dropped and it seemed like fate. So it's not just about going it alone, because you're essentially still a prime if you're developing like a joint venture concept with another business. Like nobody does it alone. So find those other companies that can really build upon it for you, and you can establish that synergy with.
Sure, Michelle. Yeah, definitely. We will look into that area as well. Actually, like Census Bureau is one thing that probably I need to look into that as a next. And I joined a little late, not little late, very late to this meeting. Sorry. Would I be able to get the presentation slide? What do you mean?
Yeah, we're posting everything in the digital agenda, which I have posted as public.
Okay.
So, and I can repost that chat. So, and you guys can view all of the other sessions. If you actually look at the attachment from September 1st from SBA, Lori Gillen actually provided links to a lot of the agencies that had a significant shift, like ones that were struggling before, but just complete transformation in their type of set aside. So, I mean, the mindset is finally changing around the HUBZone program, but the reality is that a lot of these agencies that have been meeting their goals, they haven't been meeting it with set asides. Like DLA Land and Maritime, I gave them an award a couple of years back because of the fact, not because they met their goal, because they did the most number of set asides. We don't want to award agencies for just working the system and using contract vehicles and 5 companies making up their bulk spend. We want to see unique companies getting opportunities, because that's the whole point of sustaining our industrial base.
Yeah, that would be the greatest thing, because like actually that's where a lot of companies like us struggling to get the first breakthrough into getting into the agency as a prime, right? So that's one of the challenge we have. And I think this kind of support would really help to get us through.
Is the prime contractor you're supporting, are they a large business or a small business?
I mean, some of them are large, some of them small business, mostly small businesses. I think that's one of the challenge too, right? Because there
are
are
a lot of them 8A too? Or?
Yeah, a couple of them are 8A, and yes, correct.
And just remember too, when they graduate and you establish that strong connection with them, what are they going to do? They're going to say, all right, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to go in as the prime, and we'll come in as the sub, because they're going to have to, well, as she said, monitoring those recompetes. Right. So, sometimes you don't want to overshadow your prime, because then you burn that relationship. But, if you keep that strong and you do good work for them, eventually your time is going to come.
Yes, Michelle. Yeah, I think that we are definitely speaking with one of the IT company, and we are kind of looking some good prospects on that as well. Yes. Yeah.
So, and Linwood Owen said, reach out to me. So apparently, like I said, nobody does it alone. So Linwood sent a message asking you to please reach out to him because we are an 8A in HUBZone small business with 11 prime contracts at HHS. Woo woo. All right.
Wow.
So, you know, the HUBZone community, we're a family and we take care of each other. So I'm glad. And I
Yeah,
apologize, Alicia, that I just kept talking, but this was finally the first presentation where we talked about like just the HUBZone program. And I'm really excited to know about, you know, I want to further a conversation about the different types of like proposal writing courses and things like that. And even maybe do a follow on for some of our HUBZone members about, you know, how they can move forward with potentially taking advantage of this.
Absolutely, we'll be happy to.
That would be wonderful. And yes, as soon as this downloads, the recording will be available with all of my random commentary and all. Sorry, guys. But Alicia,
That was excellent. Like, don't apologize for that.
Do you have, let me make sure I didn't miss any other questions. And people are still asking. So I will supply the contact listing to Alicia after this. Nicole, did you actually sign up through it or did you have the link that brought you directly in? Because if you signed up, I'm going to give the email addresses to Alicia so she can, you know, follow up with everybody.
Yep.
Again, Nicole, can you confirm if you did? Because if you didn't sign up, okay, you did. So I'll send that to her. So then she'll have the list because I'm sure almost everybody on this call probably wants to know more about that, me included.
All right. So Lenny, you have a question. I would love to learn more about when a prime graduates, then maybe a sub can flip and become a prime. And I assume you're talking about the 8A program, correct?
I guess it could be either one.
Correct. Yeah, either one.
Yeah, 8A. All right. So basically what happens, so when you're in 8A program, you have 9 years in the 8A program, and your most valuable out of those 9 years are the first 5, and then the last 4 is really the transitional ones. And when you really think about like why they're most valuable, is because when you really think, hey, you know, when you start putting together those partnerships, right? The contracts, your average contract is 3 to 5 years, right? In duration. So you want to flip that contract over from prime to sub and like keep that relationship going. You want it to flip over multiple times over the duration. So the longer you have in the program, the more, you know, the less courses that the previous prime has to switch. And so what really happens is those partnerships need to be formed very early on for you to basically date and then get married when you say, hey, you know, now you're going to be flipping all the contracts that you have through, you know, to us, because you are about to graduate, you are graduating the 8A program, you're already, you know, so essentially you want to form a relationship early. So how do you actually go hunting for expiring 8A companies and expiring contracts at the same time? Is you use tools like Bloomberg government, for example, has a calculator for that. FedMine has a calculator for that, but you don't have to like pay for the expensive tools to do that. What you do need to do is you basically need to look at the expiring contracts on USAspending.gov and then look up who is the incumbent and when there's their graduation coming up with the SBA. And essentially, so once you look them up in a dynamic small business search, you'll know when they're up for expiration. You look at the 2 dates and do the analysis. The only problem with doing it sort of last minute is a lot of them will have already gotten themselves partners. So you want to start that process early. You want to plan really well. You want to approach companies a few years in advance before they're graduating the 8A program, start a dialogue, maybe work with them, team with them, see what they're like to work with, right? Do you want to have that relationship going on? Because I've heard horror stories about that too. So so that's the kind of thing that you want to do and plan for it very early. And if you're the 8A that's about to graduate, you want to start that process early too, finding suitors for yourself to whom you're going to flip the business to like 2-3 years in advance. Does it make sense? Did I answer your question?
I mean, it
Yes.
makes perfect sense to me.
Right.
I mean, and the same would, Lenny, yeah, the same would be if you were HUBZone and you were losing your status, you could have Foster was similarly situated with another company. Yeah, so, but yeah, same concept. Is there any other last minute questions? Yes, and Felicia, yes, we were gonna have the recording will be made available. So don't worry, you won't miss out. All right, well, I know that you probably have a lot to do. And I really, really, really appreciate you coming on and even staying longer. That, so much. And thankfully, I actually got a request for somebody saying, hey, do you have any tools or resources that would be really good with the companies developing a strategy? And I'm like, oh, well, now I can just send them your recording. So, killing two birds with one stone. So thank you so much. And I apologize. I was reading that what those came in from Smart Building. They were just making a statement. They didn't. And says as a sub, we can look for opportunities. You can find Subnet is a good tool for opportunities, but sometimes even looking, as she mentioned, USA spending at the contract awards, that if a contract's over a certain value and it was solicited under open competition, it's going to have a subcontracting plan. There is a few exclusions that apply, but if you go to Subnet, they usually keep a running total. And I think Subnet's now under still beta.sam, but it still diverts. But, and it'll identify the contract awards that have subcontracting. Also, I personally, a lot of times people use BD tools. I use Teaming Pro a lot, and they have a function in there. And Teaming Pro actually supplies our members with like 50% off the license because those BD tools can get really expensive. But, so there's different avenues that you can go to find them, but there is open source networks that you can use. Again, I will stop talking because I know you probably have a million things to do, but thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that said, I will let you guys all go. And just a reminder, we do have some sessions this afternoon that you guys aren't going to want to miss. So if you're not aware of those sessions, you can check out our event calendar. I have a link directly to them, and they are free webinars for you guys. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day. Happy Friday.
Thank you. Happy Friday, guys.